Welcome back to the big picture. So we are talking about those gas prices.
Yeah,
It's not getting better, guys.
Yeah, we're hoping for maybe a drop this week. So, with that being said, right now we're going to bring in
Patrick DeHaan. He is the chief petroleum analyst with Gas Buddy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Memorial Day travel is wrapping up, but what are you seeing at the pump this morning compared to where we were maybe just a week ago?
Yeah, nice decline. Columbus, especially here in the Great Lakes, Columbus prices dipping about 15 cents a gallon after jumping up to 4.89. The average prices declined back down to about 4.66, and we probably will go a bit lower here, at least for the next few days. Exactly how long is going to be contingent on, guess what? Any developments between the U.S. and Iran, which seem to be just swinging wildly from side to side on whether or not there's going to be a deal. Over the weekend, the U.S. Making some self-defense attacks on Iran, Iran now promising retaliation. In light of that, though, there's been a lot of chatter over a broad deal. My guess right now is that the amount of attention being paid to getting a deal done is pretty elevated. I hope that new attacks don't derail the process. If we do get closer to a deal, if it seems like more of the headlines are focusing on a deal, we could see gas prices continue to drop. But the market is having a hard time with all of this as well. Brent crude oil is actually up close to $3.50 a barrel. Now, this really gets into the weeds, but Brent crude oil prices are up significantly this morning because that's literally oil that would be delivered here very soon, whereas WTI crude oil is declining about $3 a barrel because that oil would be delivered while that contract doesn't expire for several weeks yet. And so what the market is essentially doing is it's worried about what's happening right now, but it's betting that in the next few weeks there will be a deal. Now, whether or not that happens is anyone's best guess. For now, I think Columbus prices should moderate slightly this week, but a little bit of uncertainty as we get into maybe closer to the weekend.
So we just heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He's in New Delhi for a meeting right now, but he basically said to reach an agreement, the strait needs to reopen. So, Patrick, what percentage of what people are paying at the pump right now would you say is tied directly back to what's happening in the Middle East?
Well, if you look at Columbus prices today compared to a year ago, prices are $1.60 higher today. They were 3.06 a year ago. They're 4.66 today. It's pretty clear cut to me that the majority of that $1.60 a gallon difference between today and a year ago has to do with the Strait of Hormuz. So it's a pretty significant sum. Prices normally this time of year would start declining as we get into the summer driving season. This year, we could continue to see oil prices going up, and that could continue to push gas prices up. And all of it really has to do with how long the Strait of Hormuz continues to be closed.
And, at least in the past, we've always kind of seen the bumps around the holiday travel seasons. Now that Memorial Day weekend has come to an end, in the short term, will we see, even a drop of a few cents continue this week? Or, now with these developments overseas, is that off the table?
Well, Ohio, in what happens in Ohio with gas prices is something called price cycling, where no matter what is happening, gas prices tend to jump every 1 to 2 weeks. That can be extended, it can be shortened as well, depending on market activities. But, we saw a hike last week. That could mean that we see prices decline. And ultimately, exactly where we go is more going to be a result of whatever does develop here over the next few days with the U.S. and Iran. If there's new attacks, if it looks like a deal is not going to happen, then oil prices could spike, and that could mean that gas prices could again jump in Columbus later this week. But if there are emerging and continuing signs that a deal may be imminent, then gas prices may spend most of the week declining. It's far too early to know exactly what's going to happen for much of the rest of the summer. What happens in oil prices today likely influences prices in just over a couple of days. So watch oil markets carefully, but it's been a very challenging time to be an analyst just because it's less about fundamentals and more about the market trying to assess if or not there's going to be a deal.
Mm-hmm. And at what point do you think people in Ohio might have to pay over $5 for a gallon of gas? A couple weeks, or just it really all depends?
Yeah, it could be a couple of weeks. It really is all contingent on the degree of what develops between the U.S. and Iran. If suddenly both sides start attacking each other implicitly without any real slowdown, then we could see $5 a gallon in a week or two. But if things slowly continue to point towards more negotiation, more dialogue, then prices could fall back close to maybe even the low $4 a gallon level by July 4, maybe even below that if things go really well.
One more. Just because of the more expensive costs for gas, did you see less travelers this holiday weekend buying gas? Were people staying put this Memorial Day weekend? Or were they
Yeah,
still
we're
heading
still
out
looking
there?
at some of that gasoline demand information. It does take a couple of days for us to see real time consumption, but I still expect it was a very brisk holiday. But it would not surprise me to see maybe a 2 to 3% decline in gasoline demand this Memorial Day weekend compared to last, because there is a subset of Americans that are just throwing in the towel as gas prices get close to that $5 a gallon mark.
And it really, the kind of the final wrap up here, bottom line of all of this is how it affects everybody's pocketbooks. And, is there really a mistake that drivers are making when they're trying to save on whether that be gas or how much they're paying at the pump?
Well, I don't know if there's a mistake, but there's always room for improvement, especially Americans. We're all in a hurry. I certainly like to get to where I need to go as quick as possible. But in the interim, my driving styles aren't as fuel efficient as they could be. So if anyone's looking to shave down what they're paying at the pump, you can get more miles out of every tank you fill up by trying to use your cruise control, reducing your speed around town and on the highway. Basically, just make your car work a little less hard. You'll get more miles out of every tank you drive.
All right, Patrick DeHaan with Gas Buddy. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.